Okay, so this is task 15. This is going to be our fecal centrifugation with flotation. So what I have for all of that is I have my stool sample, of course, donated by a lovely dog this afternoon. I have just a tongue depressor wood applicator to use to get it out. I also have a cotton swab with a wooden end applicator that I can just use to mix it up. We have it's not a swing arm centrifuge. Our centrifuge has the arms on an angle. So for this, because you have to get it up close to the top of it, I actually use a red top tube and I fill it almost to the top so that I can cap it and then put it in our centrifuge and spin it that way and then pop it off. This way I can get the rise that I need from the centrifuging, but I don't make a mess of our centrifuge. So I have 2 red top tubes, one for my sample and one to balance out. Also to equalize the pressure, I have an 18 gauge needle that I'm just going to use to put in the top of my red top tube so that I can get that liquid, so I don't have the top pop off from the air pressure. I also have our fecalizing solution. So we use the Fecatect sodium 127 by Henry Schein. This is our big jug of it. And then we put it in our little bottle here. So this is what I will use for our sample. This is just our doctor's preference, so this is what we use in our hospital. So what I'm gonna do is get my sample out. I'm gonna pop my tops. Pop. And then I only need a little bit, about 1/4 of a teaspoon or so. I don't need a ton. So I'm just gonna kind of eyeball a chunk about the size of my pinky nail. Sorry, there's a lot of hair apparently in this. All sticking together. Okay. So this is about all I need, not very much at all. And I'm gonna just try to carefully put this in my specimen tube. I might be able to, yeah, stick it. There we go. Okay. I'm gonna put my sample aside. And then I'm gonna put, get closer. I'm just gonna put a little bit of our solution in here, enough so that I can stir it up without making too much of a mess. And I might have too much sample in here, but it should be okay. Most of this major debris will settle out during the centrifuging process. I'm gonna just take my swab out. I'm gonna fill this up. I'm gonna get pretty close to the top, pretty much to the line of the label. And then I like to stick my needle in my top kind of before I put it in, so it goes through like this, and that way I can put my top on and have all the air escape out. They don't make too much of a mess. All right, so there's our sample, and now I am going to put my needle through this side. And I'm going to fill this up with water, so I can move you to our dental sink. Go quick. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing, just with regular water to balance. I'm just going to eyeball about the same amount. So I'm going to take my cap, put it on. our sample. And then spin you around again. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy. So there's our two samples. They're pretty actually even as far as water is concerned. I'll make you over here. So right there. Well, our one sample and our one water for balance. So I'm just gonna recap my needle. Okay, and then I'm gonna pause the video real quick and I'm gonna get over to the centrifuge. Okay, so we are now going to centrifuge our fecal float sample. So this is our centrifuge. I'm gonna pop it open and I'm going to put the water and the fecal float on opposite sides. I think my water is on number 2, my fecal is on number 8. They're the only items in our centrifuge right now, so I'm not gonna worry about writing them down. But I would need to write down the numbers if I had a couple samples. So with these, you want to centrifuge them on about 1500 RPMs for 3 to 5 minutes, I think it is, something like that. So I am going to turn this on. Our machine is fast, this one is fast, so it runs about 500 over. So I am going to turn it on and I'm going to turn it to 2000 RPM so that I can get the 1500 that we need. Sorry, it's just... Alright, and then I'm just going to let that sit for about 5 minutes or so, and then I'll be back to turn it off and run our sample. So our sample has finished spinning in the centrifuge, so you can see how we have kind of a nice dispersion of the solution here. Most of the solids are here. It is cloudy and there are some items floating throughout. That's just because of the specific density, the specific gravity of the items in the stool versus the liquid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cover off of this very carefully. And when I pulled it out of the centrifuge, I was sure, because like I said, this has a cap, I don't want any floating parasite ova on the top of the solution to stick to the cap. So I'm sure to keep it upright at all times. Try not to let my solution get in contact with the cap. So you can see my cap is actually fairly clean. I'm going to put it in our specimen holder as upright as possible. So my next step now is that I'm actually going to fill this, get you in closer. I'm going to fill our specimens tube, just sitting with all of our pens. Great. Fill our specimen tube right up to the top. And I just want to make a little meniscus right at the top, so a little bit of a bubbling. And then I'm going to take a cover slip, just a single one. Ours tend to stick together for some reason. I'll take a single cover slip and put it right at the top of our sample. And I'm just going to let this sit for about 10-15 minutes. And I will then transfer it to a microslip cover to read, but I'm going to let it sit first for the 15 minutes and then I'll be back. Alright, so we have waited our 15 minutes for our slide sample, our fecal sample to set. So what I'm going to do is take our slide from our set here, and I like to do, I always feel for the frosted edge, I keep the frosted edge up. And then I'm just going to carefully transfer the slip cover off of the stool sample and onto my slide. There's a little bit of a bubble there, so I'm just trying to keep it even. And then I'm going to put my frosted edge to my left and my microscope on. I usually start at the 4x power just to get an idea of where I'm at. Find my corners. I like to start at a corner. The way I read fecal samples is I always go up, over, down, over, up, over, down, over, across the whole length of the slide. I like to read it on the 10x lens. I use the 4x just for my positioning. And then I'll take a look at the whole thing. And the reason we let the stool sample set for 15 minutes afterwards is because we added the extra flotation solution. So it can take up to 15 minutes for any ova in the sample to float to the top. So the centrifuge helps push them up a little bit more and gets more of them out of the sample. But then we still need to wait the 15 minutes for them to come up to the top. Alright. So I do have some crystallization where some of the solution dried around the outside. And there is a lot of pollen this time of year. So I gotta watch out for that. Lots of pollen, yeah. And bubbles. Bubbles can also be confused with roundworm eggs, so you have to be careful to make sure that you're getting the depth of frame. Often when you're changing depth of the slide, of the view of the slide, then you can distinguish bubbles and the pollen from other parasite eggs. Parasite ova. Another pollen. Bubble, bubble, bubble. Because centrifugation helps to push get some of the parasites, more of the parasite ova out of the sample, it often gives you a better results than if you were to use just simple fecal float. Alright, set this back to 4, move my slide down. Okay, so this pet would be negative based on our fecal centrifugation float. I do want to grab a pen. I want to draw you a quick picture. So some of the samples, the pollen that I was looking at, if I were to draw them on a 3D model, they kind of have this trilobed appearance like this. So if they're laying on their side a certain way, or if they're at a certain angle, sometimes you can confuse those with the parasite ova, so you really have to change the depths in order to view it. Another one, I don't know if I'm going to be able to draw this as well, but it's really just this spiky kind of pollen that we're seeing right now. It's covered with little spines. If I draw it, that's kind of what it is. I'm really bad at drawing. And you really got to change the views and the depths as well to be able to see that it's this big spiky ball of pollen. If you were to go by it really quickly and you weren't paying attention, you might confuse it with another parasite ova. But that is what that is. I do want to show you quickly what we use. So this is one of our tools for talking to our patients and our clients. Well, we can't talk to our patients, but our clients about parasites. So this is an old version of the Pfizer Atlas of Veterinary Clinical Parasitology. I don't even know how old this is, but it's a really good resource for us. We also use it when the kids come to visit. We have the preschools that come tour our office. So this just breaks down all of the some of the different parasites. So these are hookworm larvae, and then this is the hookworm life cycle. So the puppies can get it through the milk from the mothers. It can also go subcutaneous larval migrans, and get into the puppies that way, and then they start shedding eggs. It can get into the ground soil. They can either ingest it, or it can get through the skin again and then back into the dog. So that is a great way of showing that. It also breaks it down to all the different other ones too. So we have life cycle for whipworms. There is our whipworm egg, our whipworm ova. The mature dog passes it in the stool, develops in 2 to 4 weeks within the egg. The dog ingests it again, either from infective soil or some other material, and then the dog gets infected again. Those are whipworms, and then it does roundworms. So those are some of the roundworm ova. This one uses a cat, so the kittens or the puppies, if it were a dog, can get infected when the either through the placenta or through the milk from the mother, and then either the mother or the kittens can pass the eggs in the stool. These are a couple of the more developed eggs, and then developing into the worms in a couple of weeks, about 1 week for Toxoscaris and then 4 weeks for Toxocara. They can infect wildlife like chipmunks and squirrels, and then if they get the roundworms and the cat ingests them, then the cat gets infected again and the cycle starts again. It also does tapeworms. With our fecal solution, we don't often see tapeworm eggs. Usually we diagnose these either by the client saying they're seeing them, or if we're doing a fecal sample and we do kind of a gross exam of the stool, then we might see tapeworm segments or tapeworm eggs in them, the little things that look like, often clients call them, they say, there's grains of rice in my dog's stool. It's usually what they are. So the tapeworm segments get shed. These develop into egg packets. They are ingested by fleas, and then the flea transmits the tapeworm to the cat or the dog. So that's that. This is the Tenia species of tapeworms, so it goes along the same way. Slightly different route. So they shed them, infected intermediate hosts, and then the cat eats the intermediate host and gets infected. And then the last one this goes through is Giardia. We do not usually see Giardia on a fecal float here in the hospital. I mean, some people can see them on fecal floats, but we don't usually see them that way. We have a specific IDEX ELISA SNAP for Giardia. So this one is usually from contaminated water sources. So it passes in the dog's stool, it gets on their butt. The oocysts can attach to the dog's butt, and then they can either groom and then they can reinfect, or if other dogs are grooming the dog, they can infect that way. They can also infect it in their stool. They pass in the feces. It can get into water sources and then infect other hosts. So this has been a great resource to help with our clients to discuss the different parasites that are out there. So that is that.